This week on Inside Scoop, the Democrats' shutdown strategy, the Republicans' big mess in Texas, and no more subsidies for the Affordable Care Act. Welcome to Inside Scoop, where we talk about all the news that's fit to print in our Washington Examiner magazine. I'm Jim Antle, your host. And this week, we talk about how Democrats learn to stop worrying and love the government shutdown. Government shutdowns have historically been more of a conservative Republican strategy for trying to extract policy concessions from Democratic presidents when Republicans either control Congress or have sufficient power in the Senate to mount filibusters. Now that's what Democrats are doing. They have enough votes in the Senate to filibuster to prevent a clean funding bill from passing, but they don't control anything, not the House, not the Senate, not the White House. But make no mistake, they are the ones who are responsible for the government shutdown. And sometimes, as was the case with House Democratic Whip Catherine Clark, they say the quiet part out loud.
I mean, shutdowns are terrible, and of course there will be families that are going to suffer. We take that responsibility very seriously, but it is one of the few leverage times we have.
Leverage times. So they're being very clear that their ability to jam up this government funding bill is a point of leverage they have to gain some policy concessions, to perhaps get some subsidies for Obamacare that were pandemic era extended again, or to get some other unnamed concession from President Donald Trump, who it's very important they've all decided to fight. And when Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer went against the shutdown strategy in March, he faced a huge backlash from the party's progressive base. House Speaker Mike Johnson has been trying to be very clear about pointing this fact out.
We just let their own words speak for themselves. We're not for that. The Democrats are. I'll leave you with this thought. Republicans have now voted 13 times to open your government. The Democrats have voted 13 times to close it. The Democrats own the shutdown and all these horrible consequences, and you need to remind them of that.
So historically speaking, really dating back to when Bill Clinton was president, a core Democratic argument is that it was illegitimate to shut down the federal government, even partially, in order to get some unrelated policy preference implemented into law. It's not supposed to be leverage time. It's supposed to be funding the government time. Conservatives, such as the Freedom Caucus faction of the House, had long sought to use government shutdowns as a strategy for downsizing the federal government, or at least trying to rein in some of the federal spending that was happening under Democratic administrations and Congresses. However, many Republicans concluded that the shutdown strategy doesn't work. House Appropriations Committee Chairman Tom Cole of Oklahoma is one person who has made that argument.
Solid majorities in both chambers want the government to stay open. It's only the two top leaders of the Democratic Party, and I can tell you, a lot of their members are not comfortable with where they're at. A lot of their members think this is not something we should be doing, is shutting down the government. We should be negotiating, working, trying to find common ground. But again, it's Leader Schumer and Leader Jeffries who I think have ginned up this fight.
So Democrats are going to test whether the shutdown strategy can work any better for them in terms of changing policy than it did for Republicans when they've attempted in the past, sometimes over the objections of their own leadership. This time, Democratic leadership is fully on board with trying this, and they're hoping that voters will blame President Trump and Republican congressional leaders instead, simply on the basis of the fact that they control everything, and that many voters may not understand that the process, the procedural tools like the filibuster have an impact and let the minority in the Senate do certain things and hold up the entirety of government funding. So we're getting very close to a record-long government shutdown. There doesn't seem to be any off-ramp that's very obvious that's in sight. Neither side is backing down. There will be some members in competitive House districts in particular who are going to start getting nervous as we head closer to the holidays. It remains to be seen whether Trump and the Republicans can break the shutdown or whether Democrats will decide to listen to government workers over their own left-wing base. What do you think? Is there any way out of the government shutdown? Which side is going to compromise? Is there a side that's going to cave? If you're watching us on social media, comment down below. One of the reasons Democrats are pursuing the government shutdown isn't really garnering much sympathy. Our Tiana Lowe Doescher explains why not one more dime should go to bailing out the Unaffordable Care Act.
At the risk of Senator Amy Klobuchar throwing a comb at another staffer, I must point out that she may have accidentally given the shutdown game away for congressional Democrats. They have held the federal government hostage for nearly a month now over Republicans' refusal to extend former President Joe Biden's enhanced COVID-19-era subsidies for the Affordable Care Act. In an October 20th post on X, Klobuchar lamented that without taxpayers shelling out another $350 to $450 billion on extending the Enhanced Affordable Care Act subsidies, early retirees like Bill and Shelley will see their health insurance premiums increase nearly 300%, from $42 to $1,700 per month. But who are Bill and Shelley? According to a CNBC Puff piece on the, quote, early retirees, Shelley says she has not worked full-time since 2015, when she was about 50 years old. And before that, she was only intermittently employed in, quote, various roles at banks and then in state employment. Bill said he retired as a civil engineer in 2022, at the age of about 58. He worked in local and state government for 31 years, and according to public records, was earning at least $181,000 by 2016. Despite bringing in a modified gross adjusted income of $136,000 last year, Bill and Shelley received some $15,000 in enhanced ACA subsidies last year. CNBC lamented that Bill and Shelley will have to make tough lifestyle decisions, including pulling more money from retirement savings, claiming Social Security earlier than planned, which would put a lock in a lower lifetime benefit, putting off non-mandatory medical care, and traveling less. If Bill and Shelley serve as any warning to congressional Republicans, let it be that they cannot budge a single inch on extending the enhanced ACA subsidies, which Biden originally intended to expire by the end of 2022. Extending the enhanced subsidies would correctly be interpreted as the categorical betrayal of a GOP that has promised to overturn, not just lightly defund, Obamacare. It would also be a financial crime of generational warfare against young workers already bled dry by the entitlement state that will never repay them. Recall that Biden's Enhanced Affordable Care Act subsidies expanded eligibility to include illegal aliens and American households earning more than $500,000 salaries annually. Klobuchar and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and the rest of the resistance cannot trot out the parents working overtime who will face thousands of dollars in increased costs over the expiration of the enhanced subsidies because they do not exist. When they actually do identify the individual beneficiaries of the emergency enhancements expiring, Democrats are shocked to realize that the rest of the country is not as sympathetic that a microscopic dose of fiscal responsibility may force Bill and Shelley to truncate their 30-year vacation. Ballooning deficits directly translate into higher interest rates and more expensive mortgages. Continuing to bankroll Bill and Shelley's 30-year retirement doesn't just drive young Americans further into debt, it makes the American dream for their children and grandchildren even more impossible. Democrats may pity Bill and Shelley, but Republicans ought not reallocate one more dime to well-off boomers so long as they want to be the party of family formation. I'm Tiana Lowe Doescher. Back to you, Jim.
Thank you, Tiana. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can read Tiana's full story by clicking here on our digital magazine. And this week, I'm joined by veteran Capitol Hill reporter Juliegrace Brufke, who wrote a piece for this week's issue about one of the hottest primaries we're expecting next year. Thanks for being here, Juliegrace.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
So the Texas Senate primary on the Republican side was already going to be one of the most contentious. Now there's a third entrant into the race. Walk us through why people were maybe a little perplexed by that.
So it's messy. I mean, Wesley Hunt, he entered the race, and a lot of his delegation, I spoke to multiple members, could lead to a runoff, which could make things more expensive. Some of them would like to see John Cornyn prevail in that, and are worried about who it could pull votes away from. And a lot of his colleagues have criticized him for not coming in for votes on Mondays and Fridays and flying out early, arguing that he's not prepared to serve in the upper chamber. Now, he definitely disputes that, but it's kind of where things stand right now.
So Wesley Hunt, he's a member of the House, Texas Republican congressman. Republicans are obviously looking to defend a very narrow House majority. They're also looking to defend a Senate majority, and while the Texas Senate race in the general election isn't expected to be particularly competitive, people are a little worried that maybe the candidates other than John Cornyn won't be as strong in a general.
And I think there are definitely some concerns about Ken Paxton. There was the whole impeachment situation during his term as AG. Is in a messy divorce with affair allegations involved, so that's kind of a mess where they're worried about the opposition research that could emerge in a general, and there could be a Doug Jones situation like we saw in Alabama years back.
Right, yeah, that was a pretty safe red state, but Roy Moore was a controversial enough candidate, didn't quite prevail in the general election. You talked a lot to Wesley Hunt for this story. He says that some of the criticism of him is unfair. What are his arguments for why he belongs in this race?
So he thinks there needs to be some fresh blood. He feels like these people are too old to be there. He's in his 40s. He feels like he can be there for a long time. He kind of shot down he's not there for key votes by saying he's got a young family. He also wants to be there, and Republicans should be pro-family. So that was kind of his big argument on that point. He also said that he hit the campaign trail pretty hard with Trump, which some of his colleagues kind of dismissed, brushing off, saying that Trump really didn't need him by his side as a surrogate as often as he was there. But he was like, I was there for the president. All three of them are kind of vying for that endorsement right now. So we'll see how that plays out.
So yeah, Donald Trump, he definitely is a big factor in any competitive Republican primary. Obviously, he could have a pretty big impact on this race as well if he chooses to.
He could. I mean, we've seen it in multiple Senate races in the past where people have been trailing. I mean, even J.D. Vance back in the day in Ohio was kind of trailing candidates until Trump swooped in there and endorsed him. Now he's vice president, so we'll see. Wesley Hunt had kind of initially said that he wouldn't enter the race without that endorsement, but now he's like, I want the endorsement of the voters. So I think it's going to be interesting to see kind of how these fundraising numbers play out and what these early polling, some of these new polling numbers are going to look like in this race. But I mean, I've talked to all three camps, and they're all kind of feeling good where they're at right now.
And Trump is sort of the subtext of a lot of the argument that people are making against Cornyn. They're saying that he's not quite as loyal to the president as maybe some of the other options are presenting themselves as being.
Speaking to the Cornyn camp, they feel like his record kind of is largely aligned with the president, and I think a lot of people in leadership would kind of like to see Trump rally behind him and kind of keep things in line there. I feel like that's kind of the easiest, least expensive path in terms of this campaign.
Thank you, Juliegrace.
Thanks for having me.
You can read Juliegrace's full story and all the articles we talked about in today's show in our Washington Examiner digital magazine. This has been your Inside Scoop. I'm Jim Antle, your host. We'll catch you next time.